Over the past couple of years, there has been talk about restoring commuter rail to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Currently, Cape Cod already has a passenger train from Boston called the CapeFlyer, but there's a number of issues with that train. First, it is a seasonal, weekend-only train that runs one round trip per day. This isn't very flexible for people who don't want to spend the whole day stuck on the Cape. It also caters to tourists coming from Boston and really isn't useful for the residents of Cape Cod. It also can't be used for commuting for those that work normal hours Monday through Friday. On top of this, the train's route on the Cape side is limited to 30 miles per hour, which means the train takes an hour to get from Buzzards Bay to Hyannis. Now, I'm not saying this train is bad, but I'm saying it can be improved upon to better serve more people at a higher frequency. To have trains running at a higher frequency, you would need more train sets, crews, station upgrades, track upgrades, funding, and potentially more things like signals, positive train control, support from the political side of things. This would certainly cost some money and won't happen just yet, but there is momentum in multiple forms. First, there's a lot of support for passenger rail from advocates and politicians. There's also political pushes like one I discussed in 2023 that aims to look into bringing passenger trains onto the Cape. Lastly, there's a bill to bring trains to Buzzards Bay first. This is a much needed first step to getting trains to the Cape, even if these don't cross the bridge yet. The Bourne Enterprise reported on this issue in an article from this month, May 2025. The Massachusetts State Senate passed S.2512, a fiscal year 2025 supplemental budget making critical investments in critical public needs across the Commonwealth, including education, infrastructure, and community services. Senator Dylan A. Fernandez successfully passed 16 amendments in the budget, bringing home a total of $750,000 in funding to the district. A major priority for Bourne is the expansion of commuter rail service to Buzzards Bay. As part of the FY25 supplemental budget, Senator Fernandez secured $25,000 to fund a study exploring the feasibility of extending commuter rail to the town. This feasibility study is a significant step toward enhancing regional connectivity, reducing traffic congestion, and boosting economic opportunities in Bourne. Bringing commuter rail back to Buzzards Bay will boost economic development and transportation access for Bourne, said Senator Fernandez. This investment will improve transportation options for residents who rely on public transit for work and daily life, while also strengthening Bourne's position as a key hub on Cape Cod. Now, this doesn't mean we'll see trains rolling just yet, but this is a very important step in the right direction. There is also an interesting 12-month timeline once the bill is passed to get trains going, and this helps propel things forward at a reasonable rate, but it makes me question what service will be provided, at least initially. The tracks to Buzzards Bay are good for 60 miles per hour running, but lack signal systems like the rest of the MBTA system. If trains are to operate at the same frequency of other lines, then the necessary infrastructure improvements would need to be funded and completed. The cheap option on the other end of the spectrum is having one train shuttle bounce back and forth between Buzzards Bay and Middleborough as a connecting shuttle with South Coast rail trains. Either way, any service is better than none, and I'm sure the T would make the necessary upgrades as ridership and demand grows. Now, let's look at the route the trains would have to take. We'll start in Middleborough. Here, the South Coast Rail extension of the MBTA runs through, connecting Boston with the South Coast cities of Fall River and New Bedford. This opened on March 24, 2025, and it extended the Middleborough-Lakeville line to the South Coast, Previously, the Middleborough line ended at the Middleborough Lakeville station on the main line that continued south toward Cape Cod. Now that station is simply called Lakeville and is a CapeFlyer only stop. The new South Coast Rail station in Middleborough is routed off of the Cape Main and onto the Middleborough Secondary. It is located within the Y track where the Middleborough Secondary branches off to head west or railroad south. To connect Cape trains as shuttles to South Coast trains, an additional platform would have to be built, either on the main line or on the south leg of the Y. Following the line south of the Y, we pass Lakeville Station before leaving MBTA territory and entering the Mass Coastal-operated Cape Main track. The Cape Main is owned by Mass Department of Transportation, but is controlled and operated by Mass Coastal Railroad that operates the freight trains here. The next station and only stop before Buzzards Bay is Wareham. The CapeFlyer stops at a 2014-built wood high-level platform here. There's a decent amount of parking here and would be a great park and ride for those looking to go north to Boston. Lastly, we hit Buzzards Bay Station on this short section. Here we have a historic station building, tower, long low-level platform, and two short high levels. Like Wareham, one of the platforms is a 2014-built wooden platform. There have been proposals to add an additional track here, which would give the MBTA and Mass Coastal operational flexibility. The tracks on the route from Middleborough to Buzzards Bay are continuous welded rail, and they are good for 60-mile-per-hour running. Currently, it takes the CapeFlyer 33 minutes to run from Lakeville, formerly Middleborough Lakeville Station, to Buzzards Bay, which includes the Wareham stop. If you want to skip the stress of driving, this is just about on par with the driving time. Why do I refer to Buzzards Bay trains as shuttles? I personally believe we'll see the initial service operate as a shuttle. Running direct trains north to Boston would add congestion as the line is single track for most part north of Braintree. This is the reason why the East Taunton station has shuttle transfers between Fall River and New Bedford trains. Both trains can't operate on the same track at the same time going north. While shuttles are not preferable, it would get the service started in some form. Eventually, direct service north to Boston could happen depending on a number of factors. I'll start with South Coast Rail Phase 2. This Phase 2 extension is proposed to run Fall River and New Bedford trains through Stoughton versus running through Middleborough. That's because Phase 1 was a short-term solution to getting Fall River and New Bedford trains running, but it wasn't the original full plan. Phase 2 would reroute SCR to its own route, and that would let Middleborough line trains run a straight shot south to Buzzards Bay. If this were to happen, I see the Middleborough Lakeville line becoming the Buzzards Bay line. Another factor would be if the MBTA finds a way to add more siding tracks or double track on the Old Colony line, specifically north of Braintree. This bottleneck creates delays and makes rail service unreliable at times. We can't have that. One could also argue that South Station might not be able to add a significant number of more trains running in and out of it every day as well. All these factors can affect the Buzzards Bay extension, but South Coast Rail Phase 2 would probably be the easiest to implement at this point, in my opinion. It would, of course, also benefit South Coast Rail trains and bring MBTA commuter rail service to new areas. Anyways, initially, we'll probably see Buzzards Bay shuttles meeting South Coast Rail trains at the Middleborough station, but time will tell. In the end, it would be great to have real passenger rail service to Buzzards Bay in whatever form, as long as it is reliable and worth taking. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but having service to Buzzards Bay could also pave the way for increased service to the Cape itself, whether it be commuter service or additional CapeFlyer runs. Passenger rail in this area would become extremely important because of the Cape Cod Canal road bridges needing to be replaced and will for sure increase traffic during construction. It is hard to imagine traffic worse than it is already. Hopefully, there are plans to provide some sort of rail service during that time. I hope to cover this topic more in depth in another video. Until then, we'll have to see what progress is made to Buzzards Bay, so stay tuned for future updates.